When you look closely at those who've achieved extraordinary levels of success, you begin to see that their transformation didn't start with opportunity. It didn't start with money or connections or luck. It began long before any visible success appeared. It began in the unseen laboratory of their own mind. And this is where the real secret to a successful life begins, not with what you do, but with what you believe, how you think, and the mental blueprint you hold about who you are and what is possible for you. You cannot build a billionaire-level life with a bargain-level mindset. The inner architecture must rise before the outer structure can exist. Most people try to change their circumstances without first changing the psychological patterns that created those circumstances. They chase shortcuts, strategies, and quick wins, never realizing that without the right internal foundation, every achievement will eventually collapse under the weight of their own limitations. Billionaires, knowingly or not, operate differently. They start by sculpting their mental environment, refining their thoughts, strengthening their beliefs, and eliminating the inner contradictions that sabotage ordinary people. They understand something simple but profound. The mind is always constructing your future, whether consciously or unconsciously. So they choose to build consciously. They treat their mind almost like an operating system. If the system is corrupted with fear, entitlement, self-doubt, OBRR, a weak vision, nothing great can run on it. So they update it constantly. They read aggressively, analyze relentlessly, think deeply, and ask questions that force their subconscious to expand rather than shrink. What do I truly want? What must I become to deserve it? What assumptions am I still cabar-rying from childhood or society that no longer serve me? Most people never ask these questions because these questions demand personal responsibility. They demand self-awareness. And self-awareness exposes the truth, both the beauty and the discomfort of it. This internal blueprint is powerful because, say, it shapes perception. If your mind is trained to see difficulty, you will find difficulty everywhere. But if your mind is trained to see possibility, you will find opportunities even in chaos. This is anti-motivational talk. It's psychological mechanics. The mind filters reality, and those filters determine your behavior. Billionaire success often comes not from genius, but from a persistent, disciplined way of interpreting events. While the average person sees risk, they see potential. Where others see loss, they see lessons. Where others see obstacles, they see raw materials for breakthrough. And it is because their internal blueprint is calibrated toward growth, not fear. This is why you will notice that people who rise to the highest levels cultivate clarity as though it were oxygen. You cannot become powerful with a vague mind. You cannot become successful while drifting. Claret. Why is THBRE architect of destiny? It shapes your values, directs your actions, and filters your decisions. You begin to move differently when your mind is aligned with a clear vision. You waste less time. You entertain fewer distractions. You stop explaining yourself to people who cannot understand your ambit bar ion. And slowly you begin to realize that the world doesn't respond to your talent. It responds to your clarity, your certainty, your internal conviction. This inner blueprint also determines your emotional endurance. Life is not generous to the undisciplined mind. Challenges will come, setbacks, visit you, and doubt will whisper in your ear at midnight. If your mental foundation is weak, these moments will break you. But if your mind is built with the steel of purpose and the structure of self-belief, these storms don't destroy you, they refine you. Billionaires rise because they can withstand seasons that most people are psychologically unprepared for. They endure what others escape. They persist in moments where most people retreat. And all of this begins in the inner world long before it is visible in the outer world. When you shape your internal blueprint, something remarkable happens, your identity evolves. You stop seeing yourself as someone hoping to succeed, and start seeing yourself as someone destined to succeed. And that shift, subtle, quiet, internal, becomes the birthplace of every external transformation. Because the world mirrors your identity. It does not reward who you pretend to be, it rewards who you truly believe you are. So if you want to change your life at the highest level, Don T, start with what's outside. Start with the architecture within you. Shape the mind, and the world will eventually shape itself around that vision. Because everything you Bibber LD begins with the blueprint you carry. And if you dare to redesign that blueprint with intention, discipline, and clarity, you will discover that success was never a mystery. It was simply waiting for you to become the person capable of receiving it. If there is one trait that quietly separates billionaire-level success from the average person, it's the ability to act rationally in moments when emotion tries to take the steering wheel. Decision-making becomes a kind of discipline, not a reaction. You will notice that the most successful individuals are not simply smarter, they are more deliberate. They slow down the mental noise and look at choices from a place of clarity, not impulse. And this quality is not something you reborn with. It is something you cultivate moment by moment, decision by decision, until it becomes part of your identity. Most people make decisions based on habits teach BREYV, never questioned. They follow what feels comfortable, familiar, or socially approved. They are guided by the fear of loss, the desire to fit in, or the need for immediate gratification. Billionaires operate on a different spectrum entirely. They don't seek comfort, they seek correct. Finesse. They DBR on chase approval, they chase truth. Their choices are guided not by mood but by logic, long-term thinking, and a firm grasp of cause and effect. They understand that every choice is a seed, and every seed grows into a result sooner or later. Once you grasp that, decision-making stops being emotional and becomes strategic. When you look at great wealth creators, you see a pattern. They are willing to make decisions the average person avoids because those decisions often require patience, courage, and the strength to delay gratification. They are willing to walk into uncertainty with a ration-bar mind while others panic. They are willing to cut losses quickly, change direction when data shifts, and step forward even when the next step isn't fully lit. Most people cannot do that because they haven't trained their minds to remain steady when the environment becomes unpredictable. This ability to remain rational under pressure is not cold or mechanical, it's just deeply human. It is rooted in self-awareness. When you understand your own psychological patterns, your fears, your biases, your tendencies, you can override them with clarity. That's what separates leaders from followers. The average person never examines the inner forces shaping their decisions. They assume their reactions are natural when, in reality, many of them are inherited learned from parents, society, and past experiences that no longer serve them. Billionaires ask, is this thought moving me forward or is it pulling me backward? That question alone eliminates half of the noise that keeps ordinary people stuck. One of the most powerful aspects of rational decision-making is the way it sharpens your perception. You begin to see opportunities where others see chaos. You begin to notice inefficiencies that others overlook. You start making choices that may not pay off immediately, but will compound quietly in the background. And because you're rethinking long-term, your actions begin to carry weight. You stop wasting energy on arguments, distractions, and ego battles. You start aligning your choices with a big vision, and everything becomes more coherent, your habits, your goals, your relationships, your direction. And there's another subtle truth here. Rational action is often uncomfortable. It might mean saying no to short-term pleasure. It might mean ending relationships that drain you. It might mean taking responsibility for failures instead of blaming circumstances. It might mean investing when everyone else is fearful, or stepping back when everyone else is rushing forward. Most people can handle the discomfort of intelligent decisions, so they choose convenience. But convenience rarely leads to greatness. Billionaires simply accept a truth most avoid. Success demands making the right choice, not the easy one. You also start to notice that rational decision-making creates confidence, not the loud confidence rooted in ego, but the quiet, solid confidence born from CL. Arity. When you trust your judgment, you stop seeking validation. When you think independently, you stop leaning on the crowd. And when your decisions consistently align with your long-term goals, you begin to feel a sense of internal power because your life is finally being shaped intentionally, not accidentally. If you want to live at a higher level, start by elevating the quality of your decisions. Slow down, think clearly, remove emotion from the driver's seat, and place it in the passenger seat where it belongs. Ask yourself whether each choice supports the future you want or keeps you locked in the past you are trying to escape. Rational action is not about suppressing emotion, it is about leading your life with purpose instead of reaction. Because at the end of the day, your decisions shape your destiny. And the moment you begin choosing with clarity instead of comfort is the moment your life begins to rise toward a level you once believed was out of reach. There is a point in every wealthy person's journey when they realize that effort alone will never be enough. Hard work may get you started, but it is not what elevates someone to extraordinary levels of success. What separates the exceptional FBR from the average is their relationship with time, and more specifically, their understanding of compounding. Billionaires don't try to win life through sheer force. They win by building mechanisms that grow while they sleep. They understand that time can either be your greatest ally or your most silent enemy, depending on how you use it. And the moment you grasp this truth, the way you operate in your daily life begins to shift. Compounding is often spoken about in terms of money, but its power extends far beyond finance. It touches knowledge, relationships, habits, reputation, discipline, and personal evolution. Every billionaire knows that small actions, consistently executed, can create results that feel almost supernatural later on. The tragedy is that most people overlook this because compounding never feels dramatic in the beginning. It feels slow, it feels unimpressive, it feels lick-bree, nothing is happening. And that's exactly why most people quit before the results arrive. The wealthy operate with a different patience. They plant seeds knowing that trees don't grow overnight. They make decisions with the awareness that the payoff may come years later. They diversify their effort in ways that multiply themselves. Instead of relying on one stream of growth, they create multiple engines, knowledge engines, capital engines, network engines, influence engines. Each one compounds in its own way, and together they create exponential momentum that looks impossible from the outsider. Think about how knowledge compounds. When you study a subject deeply, your next book becomes easier to understand. Your next conversation becomes more insightful. Your next decision becomes more refined. Knowledge compounds not only by adding new information, but by expandi. The quality of your inking. Billionaires are relentless learners because they know something simple. Every new piece of insight increases the value of all the insights they already possess. Most people read to feel informed. Billionaires read to build mental capital that will repay them for decades. The same is true for our skills. A skill developed today becomes the foundation for a more advanced skill tomorrow. Confidence compounds as you win small battles consistently. Discipline compounds because every disciplined day makes the next one easier. Your emotional control compounds, turning chaos into clarity. Even your identity compounds. Every choice you make in alignment with your vision strengthens the version of yourself you are becoming. And then there is financial compounding, the most misunderstood and underappreciated force in creating freedom. Billionaires don't treat money emotionally. They treat it hematically. They understand that money grows not when you chase impulses, but when you build systems that multiply quietly in the background. They don't rely on talent alone. They rely on time, patience, and intelligent allocation. And they stay consistent long enough for compounding to shift from slow to unstoppable. The average person wants results that show up instantly. The wealthy want results that last. One of the greatest advantages of compounding is its ability to reward consistency more than intensity. You don't need to be extraordinary every day. You just need to be consistent more often than you are inconsistent. You don't need massive breakthroughs every month. You need small improvements every week. People get discouraged because they compare themselves to someone who has been compounding for years without understanding the invisible work behind the scenes. They judge the OBR outcome, not the process. And this misunderstanding keeps them from ever experiencing the power of compounding themselves. But here is a deeper psychological truth. Compounding forces you to trust the future version of yourself. It requires faith, not blind optimism, but intelligent belief that your bar shans today will bear fruit later. When you operate with that mindset, you stop looking for shortcuts. You stop expecting overnight transformation. You begin moving with a calm, steady confidence, knowing that every thoughtful step you take adds up over time. This is how billionaire-level success is built, not in one grand leap, but through thousands of small, intelligent steps that accumulate. When you truly embrace compounding, your entire philosophy of life changes. You become more selective with your habits because you understand their long-term consequences. You become more intentional with your time because you recognize how valuable it is. You invest more into yourself because you understand that self-growth has the highest long-term return. The difference between those who rise and those who stay stuck is not talent or luck, it is the willingness to time work with them instead of against them. Remember this, the future will come whether you prepare for it or not. The question is whether you will arrive there empowered by compounding or exhausted from resisting it. Because success is not built in dramatic moments, it is built in the quiet accumulation of decisions you make, that will shape the person you become tomorrow. One thing you begin to notice when you study people who rise to extraordinary levels of success is that they take their environment far more seriously than the average person. They don't treat the people around them as neutral influences. They treat them as forces that either strengthen or weaken the mind. Billionaires understand that success is rarely a solo performance. It's the product of a carefully curated ecosystem. And this is where many people unknowingly sabotage their potential. They underestimate how powerfully their surroundings chaperone their thinking, their behavior, their confidence, and ultimately their destiny. Think about it for a moment. Every conversation you engage in either expands your vision or shrinks it. Every person you spend time with either pulls you forward or holds you still. Every environment you remain in builds your identity or fragments it. And identity, more than anything else, determines what you believe yourself capable of achieving. Billionaires guard this inner identity with almost surgical precision. They are selective not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. They know their mindset is their most valuable asset, and they protect it the way a warrior protects their armor. Most people make the mistake of staying in environments that drain them because it feels familiar. Familiarity is comforting, but it is not the same as growth. Billionaire-level success often requires letting go OBRF people who do not align with your direction, even when you care about them. It requires distancing yourself from conversations rooted in fear, scarcity, gossip, or small thinking. It requires saying no to noise and yes to clarity. You cannot hold on to the world you've outgrown and still rise into the world you were meant to build. Selective association isn't about seeking perfection in others. It's about alignment. It's about surrounding yourself with people whose presence strengthens your vision rather than obscures it. People who think boldly, who question assumptions, who see opportunities instead of problems. People whose ambition challenges your complacency. People who have the discipline you want, the mindset you admire, or the wisdom you seek. When you re-surrounded by individuals who operate at a high level, you begin to absorb their patterns just as surely as you absorb the pat-burns of people who settle for less. There's a psychological depth to this principle that many overlook. Your environment doesn't just influence what you think, it influences what you consider normal. If you live around people who treat complaining as conversation, you start to complain without If you live around people who celebrate mediocrity, you begin lowering your standards. If you live around people who fear risk, you start doubting your bold ideas. But when you live around people who push limits, question everything, and seek growth relentlessly, your baseline shifts upward. Ambition becomes normal. Discipline becomes normal. Intelligent conversation becomes normal. And once your normal elevates, your life cannot stay the same. This is why billionaires often say that your network is not just your net worth, it is your psychological blueprint. You borrow beliefs from the people you spend the most time with. You inherit mindsets from the environments you occupy. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history didn't come from solitary moments of genius, but from the conversations, challenges, and perspectives that high-level individuals shared with one another. The NVBR ironment sharpened the mind. The association accelerated the evolution. But the truth is, upgrading your environment doesn't always begin with finding new people. It often begins with removing the wrong ones. Eliminating is just as powerful as adding. Creating silence is sometimes more valuable than adding more voices. You may not be able to access high-level thinkers immediately, but you can immediately disconnect from people who consistently drain your energy, distort your focus, or diminish your confidence. You can create your own environment through books, mentors, lectures, and content. Faber T elevates your thinking. You can build a mental ecosystem long before your physical ecosystem catches up. And once you begin surrounding yourself with the right energies, you will notice something extraordinary. Your decisions become clearer, your standards rise naturally, and your tolerance for metabureaucracy dissolves. You stop negotiating with distractions. You stop apologizing for your ambition. You begin operating with a sense of seriousness about your future. Because the environment around you no longer fights your goals, it fuels them. If there is one thing to take with you, it is this. Your environment is not just where you live, it is what you allow into your mind. Choose carefully, choose intentionally, and choose with the awareness that every association is shaping your future. Because the life you build will always rise or fall to the level of the environments you allow yourself to remain in. If you observe the lives of those who reach extraordinary levels of success, you will notice something subtle but profoundly powerful. They are not controlled by their emotions. They feel what every human feels: fear, frustration, doubt, excitement, but they refuse to let those emotions dictate their decisions. And this is not because they are naturally stoic or uniquely gifted. It is because they've trained themselves to master their emotional responses in a world that constantly tries to provoke them. Billionaires understand that emotional cant. Role is not a luxury. It is a requirement. Without it, rationality collapses, clarity dissolves, and decisions become reactions instead of deliberate choices. This is where the average person unconsciously limits their own potential. Most people live in a state of emotional reactivity. They react to criticism, react to uncertainty, react to faveur, react to discomfort. Their emotional state becomes the lens through which they see the world, often distorting their perception. They take temporary feelings and turn them into long-term decisions. A moment of fear stops them from pursuing an opportunity. A moment of anger damages a relationship. A moment of insecurity becomes a lifetime of hesitation. When you allow emotion to dominate your behavior, you become a passenger in your own life. The wealthy operate differently because they treat emotional control as a form of power. They understand that success requires a mind that is steady when others are shaking. They know that opportunities often appear disguised as problems, and only a calm mind can recognize the difference. They also know that fear is not a signal to stop it, it is a signal to observe. That stress is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of growth. That uncertainty is not a barrier, it is a doorway. But you cannot see any of this if your emotions are clouding your vision. Emotional mastery doesn't mean suppressing your feelings. Suppression creates internal conflict and eventually leads to self-destruction. Instead, it means acknowledging emotions without allowing them to make your decisions for you. It means letting the emotion rise, letting it speak, and then setting it aside while your logic takes the lead. It is a conscious separation between what you feel and what you choose to do. And that separation is where wisdom lives. This ability becomes especially important in moments of pressure, when the future is uncertain, when the stakes are high, when failure feels close enough to touch. Most people panic. They freeze or they flee. They abandon their strategies and chase impulsive decisions. Billionaires move in the opposite direction. They pause, they analyze, they breathe, they take time to think. Their calmness is not passive, it is strategic. It allows them to make decisions based on principles instead of emotions. And because they stay grounded while others unravel, they gain access to opportunities that fearful minds overlook. One of the Greber-Addist advantages of emotional control is how it influences your long-term journey. You begin to realize that every great achievement requires the ability to tolerate discomfort. Growth demands friction. Progress demands discipline. Success demands endurance. Emotional control gives you the capacity to stay consistent when motivation fades and challenges intensify. It gives you the strength to maintain your standards even when no one is watching. It turns you into someone who acts with intention instead of reacting to circumstances. You also beg to notice that emotional mastery improves your relationships. When you are calm, you communicate more clearly, you listen more deeply, you resolve conflict more intelligently, you avoid unnecessary arguments and wasted energy. Your presence becomes a stabilizing force. People can trust you because you are not unpredictable. You re-grounded, you RBRE steady, you reliable. This quality emotional steadiness is magnetic. It attracts other high-level thinkers and repels chaos. And then something remarkable happens. Once you learn to control your internal world, the external world loses its ability to control you. Stress no longer breaks you. Dober UBT no longer freezes you. Criticism no longer derails you. Challenges no longer intimidate you. You develop an inner equilibrium that remains intact no matter what happens outside of it. That equilibrium becomes your quiet strength, your competitive advantage, your hidden weapon. If you want to RISBR-E to the highest level, start by mastering the battle within you. Train your mind to pause before reacting, reflect before responding, think before deciding, practice emotional neutrality in moments when you feel triggered. This isn't easy, but it is transformational. Because the person who controls their emotions controls their direction. And the person who controls their direction controls their destiny. Let this truth settle deeply. Your greatest power is not in your talent, your intelligence, or your resources. It is in your ability to remain calm while the world around you loses balance. When you master that, you no longer chase success, you create it.